So on the whole issue of women and their role in the church, it stems logically from his issue of the people of God as the experience of the church. Then, at the time the women's issue comes up strongly in the church, he says, we must address this. There's a certain timeliness about him.
About, everything that he does. As you were saying, I was thinking of another publication date of his that I think is not coincidental. That is, it was in 1974 that he published his own sort of summa of what the Christian faith is all about, and that is on being a Christian, which became a bestseller in Germany. That happens to be an anniversary date of the death of St. Thomas Aquinas, who produced himself a very great summa of theological thought. So again, I don't think myself that this was accidental, that this publication date. We're dealing with a man with a mission to try to say, how can the church really reform itself so that it can be a force for good in the world, a force for Christian unity by getting over some of the issues that divide us, and a force for good in the world as we dialogue with the secular community also.
Do you think, Jim, that a lot of the issues he brings up, he does not provide solutions, but he's like the gadfly that simply stirs up the troops to say we should address this? I myself prefer to read someone who say, well, here's what the solution might be, or here is what the full problem really is. I find myself, I could be wrong, I'd like you to correct me on this, that so often the limitation is that we've simply blinded ourselves to one issue. And he says, observe that you have blinded yourself. I would also like to see someone come along and say, here's another way of looking at it, or here's a more beautiful horizon to move towards, even though it will evade you.
I don't know if this is a direct response to your point, Jim. I can say how I read him. When he ends up looking at an issue, he's very good at collecting what all of the aspects of the problem are. In other words, he will look at it usually historically, and he's able to see, what the different viewpoints were, how they developed. I think he's able to look at the current solutions to it and say very clearly, summarizes well what is happening. I suppose what you and I miss in him is a really consistent philosophy that grounds his own solution. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we would find him to be much more of a Protestant theologian, and I don't mean that in any negative kind of way, but as one who exercises the clear critique of the Scriptures and is always going back, is my solution in accord with the Scriptures? Does it flow from what we read in the Gospels or not? And so that's the way I see him. I see him as very good to read on any particular question. Like on being a Christian is a good example. I mean, that's a fine summary of the Christian faith. And I think, why did he write a simple summary like that? I think it is to say, look at what we've got in common. Here's what we Catholics say the faith is all about. Now, you Protestants look at this and see if you don't agree. See if you can't find a home in what I'm saying here. So I see it as broadly based. The limitation for me is the lack of the philosophy that gives it that organic feel that you and I like so much in Rahner. Mm-hmm. That's how I would end up seeing it. Jim, is there a pet point you want to get in? You got a few seconds to get in here about Hans Kung. Anything you didn't get a chance to say?
Only one thing. I'm disappointed that in the removing his authority to teach in Catholic universities, which still is under observation, I believe, that there's a stigma attached to that, and that is one of the injustices in the church, ironically, that he's often talked about. To be labeled as one not fit to teach, or to read doctoral dissertations and to examine seminarians, is already makes people wonder. It doesn't make people; it's a generalization. It shows the credibility of the whole thing. It's too much good that he's done and has said for that to happen.
I agree fully with that, and that was my own response to it. The man has done so much good. He's tried to move us towards reunion. He's called for renewal in the church. Even if he is slightly off base on a particular point, it doesn't seem to me reason to condemn this, what I think is an important contemporary theologian, Hans Kung.
You've been listening to Reflection with theologian Father James Bacik, lecturer and campus minister at the University of Toledo. Today, Father Bacik talked with Father James Bacik, pastor of St. Pius X Church in Toledo, Ohio. The topic of this week's Reflections was Hans Kuhn, Church Reform and Ecumenism. If you have any comments on today's show or suggestions for future programs, please write Father James Bacik, Catholic Campus Minister, 2086 Brookdale Drive, Toledo, Ohio, 43606. Funding for this program was provided by Diocese of Toledo.